All right, here we go with another episode of the Dietitian Against Diets podcast. I want to remind you all, my name is Rashonda Thornton, and I am the host. I'm always bringing on powerful guests, and I can't wait to introduce you to one I have coming on today. But before I do, I have to acknowledge one of my podcast partners that has been with me since day one. Janie's Mill. So one thing about Janie's Mill, reason why they are a podcast partner, because they are an organic family farm that combines better tasting foods when it comes to their grains, but also ensuring that the quality, the agricultural practices, and the nutrition are top quality. Speaking upon their work, they actually have a unique grain milling system where they use cold stone graining milling, which makes it to where the grains are still having the capacity to hold all their nutritional value, and are great when it comes to their texture and their taste when it comes to baking. Now, their products range all the way from a variety of corn, wheat, rye, oats, buckwheat, and ancient grains, which means there are a lot of fun ways to bake with their goods. Actually, if you go to their website, they have a plethora of recipes that goes from homemade scones all the way to homemade chocolate chip cookies. So go on their website and just see more about their products, how they utilize their products, and also the work that's been done behind the scenes. Go to the website at www.janiesmill.com or find them on Instagram at janiesmill. Well. Welcome to another episode of the Dietitian Against Diets. As always, introduce myself appropriately. My name is Rashonda Thornton, the host of the show. And I want to introduce you to a nice young lady. Her name is Karen Washington. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Karen before I let her take over the mic. So she has a lot of unique qualities, a lot of unique skills, and she has used it for massive positive moves. So as a farmer, she has used her skill and her passion to bridge the gap of community needs. Also, along with being a community activist in New York, as a New Yorker, she has done the work of combining leadership roles within organizations, standing up for garden preservation and protection. She is also the co-founder of an organization called Black Urban Growers, which is an organization committed to building networks and community support for growers in both urban and rural settings, with several other achievements, such as being a TEDx speaker and being voted one of Ebony Magazine's 100 most influential African Americans. That's pretty huge. She continues to move her mission to undoing racism and injustice in the food system. So that brings upon a very strong platform, because when we think of injustice, we don't look at it in the light of the food system, but this is what she does. So I want to say welcome, Karen, to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me and being here with you and your audience today.
Yes, it's such an honor. And it just amazes me when I see different individuals that have just kind of not just stepped into a role, but they have someone created their own role or created their own niche. And I myself, when I think of injustice, I don't really connect the food system. So obviously being a dietitian, you would think that I should kind of be able to thread those together. But I think that's why I have individuals like you on to kind of help me and help others really understand what that means and how can we make change. So I want to just kind of start off the conversation and just even going to how we pivoted to like this pathway of bridging that gap. Now, I would like for you, if you can discuss your lenses when it comes to inequality in regards to food, accessibility, and the connection to individual success, because I know it's all interconnected.
Yeah, so when I first started, I never thought I would be a farmer, and my relationship to food was that it grew in a grocery store. So it really wasn't until I moved to the Bronx in 1985 and had a backyard, and I decided I'm going to grow three things: tomato, eggplant, and collard greens, of course. And so it was the tomato that changed my world, because prior to that, a tomato was pink, had no taste, and it was in the grocery store. But when I grew it and it was red and on a vine and I bit into it, woo, baby.
Such a difference.
Such a difference. And then being a physical therapist too at that time, there was a relationship to food and health. And I say that because a lot of my patients were African American and Latinx, and they grew up on farms. And so when I would say to them, I'm a farmer, I'm a grower, they would say, oh, Ms. Washington, how could you? That's hard work. But then when I would mention food, all of a sudden they said, Ms. Washington, you're right. We never went to the grocery store for food. We went to our, out on the farm and got our food, and we were never sick a day in our life. And now look at me. And so now, from just hearing those stories, I just saw the correlation between food and health, and the fact that I lived in a low income neighborhood, which was succumbing to a charity based subsidized food system of fast food, junk food, and processed
Mm-hmm.
food. I decided to challenge the food system and to peel back to find out why in affluent neighborhoods the food is much better, it's healthier, and in neighborhoods of color the food is garbage. And so, really peeling back to find out that the food system is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's a caste
Mm-hmm.
system. It's based on race, demographics, and economics.
Yeah. When what you just said, I'll tell you this. One time, one of my good friends, she's in the military, and she came to visit in here in St. Louis. So I took her around to nice places, to the parks and the big buildings, and they have a lot of history here. And we came. The way it's set up, St. Louis set up, there is kind of you go through one street, and it's a totally different world from the street before. So we're driving, and I'm coming up to the light, just waiting. But it made me stop and just look around my environment. And with that particular line is the division between low income and high income. But what I saw in that corner, the four corners, I saw a KFC, I saw a Jack in the Box, and I saw a Dollar Tree. And I just paused for a moment. It was like, well, no wonder people or their health is at the always falling apart, because they're surrounded by fast foods, foods that are processed. There's no like fresh market. There's no fresh grocery store in those areas. So what you just said just really kind of reminds me of some things I've seen just sometimes right in front of your face, but you don't recognize. But you also don't recognize the ripple effect of how it is affecting those communities.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been a champion on talking about food issues like that because, again, why in the greatest country in the world where we grow enough food and we waste enough food, that food is not getting down to the people that need it the most. And I think why what's happening with COVID has just exacerbated the problem and bring it more to the forefront.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. Now, when you have kind of, the combination just being surrounded by individuals that they were in that, they recognized the value of food and just, the history of it, and seeing now, and you taking that leap into like going deeper besides, planting your tomatoes and eggplants and greens. You also just saw that the pathway really was more than just planting in your own garden, or even more than just like volunteering for organizations. You decided to take like more leadership roles, and so I know that, as a people, we always, know that we want to create change, but you happen to recognize that you need to be in that decision-making seat to make real change. And so with you being in certain leadership roles in different organizations, coalitions, and even creating your own organization, how much of a difference do you think is made when you are on the other side in regards to the one who's making the driving the direction in which that path, that mission, or that organization is driving now?
That's a good question because for so long, we have always been on the other end of the receiving end and not in the decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that as people of color. I mean, people of color, there's always this sort of savior mentality that whites are supposed to come in and save us. Save us from this food crisis, save us from inequality when it comes to economics and wealth. And so for me, it was really sort of really unlocking the history around food and farming. I mean, I'm 66 years of age, so growing up, even to think that I would become a farmer was not in the cards because, again, if you look at history, it was always equated to slave work until I was able to, again, pull back the falsehoods on why we were brought here. We weren't brought here because we were dumb. We weren't brought here because we were strong. We were brought here because of our knowledge of agriculture. And so when you start talking about that sort of history of black and brown young people to understand that, listen to me, the food that we're eating, this country eats, was built on the backs of enslaved and indigenous people. The food economy, the cuisine, the tools, the methods, all came from our ancestors. And so when you talk to young people, black and brown people, about that history, all of a sudden they're empowered. They're empowered. And then also to let them recognize the power is going back to the land, because for so long we have gone away from the land. And as a result, we've lost our power, our legacy. But now I'm starting to see things change where people understand the power of land ownership, because that is your legacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that you want to leave for generations to generations. And number two, growing your own food is powerful.
It is. And it just what you said, like, because when we were brought to this country, we were forced to, be in the land and we tried to work our best to not have to be forced. So now it's like we want to get as far as away from the thing that really what empowers us. And that's farming, and that's creating our own food world around us. And I just think this is kind of a paradox of how we as a Black people have tried to shift, but we've become so disconnected. We've become so disconnected to food, what it means, how it's self-perseverance, how, like you say, it's self-empowering. And food is more than just what's the cheapest, what smells the best, what looks the best, but what's more nourishing, and having the ability to grow that on your own. I mean, I think that's very, very valuable. And I see why you see such a drive to help the younger generations reconnect to their history, reconnect to, some skill set we should be proud of, right? Instead of like shying away from it.
Definitely. I mean, I live in the Bronx, and out of 62 counties in the state of New York, the Bronx ranks 62 as the most unhealthiest. We are surrounded, like I said, a charity-based food system of not only fast food, junk food, and processed food, but we also have the food pantries and soup kitchens. And so when people are entrenched with that sort of mindset, they don't understand the value and cost of food. As a farmer now, I had to re-educate my community, because they're so used to getting everything free. And so as a farmer, I had to explain to them that there's a cost and value in the food that I'm bringing down to this farmer's market, because as a farmer, I have to pay for room and board, and have to pay for the seeds, and there's a cost about harvesting and labor. And again, that sort of education is really not taught within our community. That's number one. Number two, I'm on the verge of really talking about our community, about social capital and communal wealth, because no one comes into our community to talk about entrepreneurship, talk about investment, talking about how to own a business, how to invest, how to save, how to repay credit. And so, me and my friends have taken upon that liberty to start having those conversations, because again, time and time again, we have never been at the forefront at the decision-making process. Again, we always ask for a seat at the table, but I say a seat at the table means nothing if we don't have the power to make decisions. And if we don't have the power to make decisions at a seat at the table, it's nothing more than window dressing and tokenism.
Wow. Now, I would say here in St. Louis, there have been a nice handful of organizations, and even like more leaning towards Black organizations that have really kind of honed in when it comes to urban farming and utilizing different spaces that are non-traditional farming ground and even above ground. Now, to me, it's starting to, again, help those communities to teaching them how to farm on their own, but also how to build their business or come together and create a farmer's market. Now, that's in St. Louis. Now, I'm only speaking for that region. So what are some things in New York that you've seen transition and change with this influx of this new, understanding of urban farming and what that looks like and what it means?
So there's so many aspects of urban agriculture. And I say that because in the beginning it was mostly soil-based. But again, with technology and creativity, you're starting to see nuances in terms of people growing on there's rooftop farms, there's vertical farms, there are greenhouses, there's aquaponics, hydroponics. There are all types of growing mechanisms. What I don't want to see is people with power and privilege, especially around the technology group, where they have access to money and they have the backing of millions of dollars to come in and push aside people have already been doing the work, and then also claiming that their method is better. There's room for everybody. There's room for everybody. And I just want to make sure that we have a food system that is just and equitable. For so long, I have seen what gentrification has done and displacement has done for people of color. And I just want to make sure that does not happen on the backs of those that have been doing the work.
Yeah. That's a slippery slope too, because I've seen that too in the backdrop of it. And Again, when you're bringing a product or bringing a service to a group of individuals that there is a barrier between what they know and what they don't know, it's easy to kind of take advantage of that or use it in a way of shifting it for your own good of what it is what you want to do, versus how you actually meeting them and trying to support them versus the other way around. And again, are they on the receiving end or are they a part of the decision making? A buzzword, and I mentioned this to you earlier, is food justice. And I know we're literally just speaking through it just through this conversation, but if you can put in in a clear way for people that have heard of those words together, but don't really know what that means. How can you define that on a micro and a macro level?
Well, there's three sort of words that people are using in the world. It's food justice, food sovereignty, and I coined the term food apartheid. So let's start with food justice, because I tell people it doesn't exist. And so people says, what do you mean it doesn't exist? Because the definition of food justice is a transformation of the food system to eliminate the disparities that we see. And so when you see that word transformation, food justice is not a passive movement, it's an active movement. And people have been using that word to pad their grants, their RFP. And I say, in order for you to do just food justice, you have to be actively working on dismantling the social injustice that you see. Social injustice around, again, race, gender inequality, social injustice about lack of access to land, social injustice about not having communities be self-sufficient and self-reliant in the decision-making, inequality when it comes to wealth and economics. And so these are some of the things that people should be actively working on dismantling if you're doing food justice. When it comes to food sovereignty, again, food sovereignty was done by a group of peasants in the global south via La Via Campesina, which really talks about self-governance of people within their community to be able to govern the way they eat, the way they farm, the way they obtain land. And again, the goal is really working on dismantling the capital injustices where they extract, rather than putting power back into the hands of people that need it the most. And the last is food apartheid. And I coined that term food apartheid because people have been using the term food deserts to describe where we live. And the bottom line is that when people talk about food deserts, they're talking about limited access to food, where in fact we do have food, we don't have healthy food options. So I coined the term food apartheid because I want people to start having these hard conversations around race, around economics, and around demographics. And if we don't have those hard conversations, then we continue to have a society that remains stagnant and powerless.
Thanks for breaking that down. Again, so many people, they'll hear those words, don't know what it means. That means they don't take the time to make any change or to learn how can they be a part of it versus just, I know about, the food justice, but that's as far as it goes. So I'm glad, thanks for just breaking that down in so many ways. Let's talk about the power of a stereotype using leverage. You have basically been able to be a part of platforms, but also build platforms. And you mentioned, you really highlighted that, through the journey you took us to your TEDx talk. I think it was 2000, maybe 8 years ago. So a couple years ago, but it's still there. So anybody want to listen to it, please go listen to it. It's very enlightening. But you talk about, but you have built this platform that now has allowed space to determine how things should be done or viewed. And that's what we build platforms for, because we redefine whatever stereotypes are out there and create our own definition for it. So clearly you recognize this from the beginning when you were talking about your journey of getting up to, talking into individual that has the power and speaking to them about how to make change. So what was the driver and the mark to claim this territory when it comes to using your leverage?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as being a person of color, the stereotypes still exist. I mean, I remember back in the day when I had a big afro. I had a fro, and so the interpretation again is this woman with a fro, and anytime we try to sort of project our thoughts as always being aggressive or we're
Mm-hmm.
angry. And so there came a time where, as a community organizer, we were meeting the head of the commissioner of NYPD, because at that time crack cocaine was very prevalent, and we had been asking the police department to shut down the drug dens and had no cooperation whatsoever. So again, going through you have to understand how things work. There's always change of commands that you have to go through before you see the top person. And
Mm-hmm.
so we went through all those chain of commands. And so it came to now, okay, now we at your door, Commissioner. So you walk in, we all have big fros. And the first thing, again, the stereotype is, oh no, here they are again complaining. However, what we did, which was really, really important, is that, okay, people look at you first. You walk in the door, the first thing they see is your appearance and the color of your skin.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. So then how do you erase that? Well, the thing is that we stepped forward and we started to articulate the facts, the figures, so that he could do nothing but listen to what we had to say. He sat down, he listened, because we didn't go in there yelling and screaming and hollering. We just sort of turned it around. We went there projecting our facts, statistics, data to show him exactly what we were talking about, where the dens were. That man sat down. He said to us, the next day, the dens will be closed. And sure enough, they were closed. And so from that point, I just learned again, how to leverage your power in such a way, because the first thing, as a Black person, the first thing people they key in is on the color of your skin. So there's
Mm-hmm.
all these preconceived notions, especially those who only know the Black experience from what they read in a paper, what they see in TV or the movies. And so if that's your frame of reference of what it is to be Black, then
Yeah.
of course you have these stereotypes. So I use that leverage because I'm saying, okay, you're coming in because you're already figured me out, but you don't know me,
Have not a
and
clue.
use that as positive
Yeah. Wow. That's
reinforcement.
very clever, and clever in a way that it's not even rocket science. It's the fact that you have to go through this other barrier that's just your presence, and to just help him to see something he wouldn't even thought about, in regards to the information you guys were providing him. I'm sure he was really taken aback by it and really understood that you guys were serious, not just coming there to raise HE hockey sticks, but to stand up for what's going on in your community. So that's, again, I totally get an understanding why when you're talking about now just breaking down those barriers of stereotypes, but using your leverage to do so.
Yes.
So this not only took you to the commissioner, but this has also allowed you to stand on your platform and kind of be separated in a way, So we're gonna, I one of the questions I do want to ask you is, you had the opportunity to, go to the White House. You've been awarded, you've been recognized as one of the 100 influential. At first, I thought it was influential Black women, but it's influential African Americans. So it's across the board, men and women. So that's grandiose to me. So just kind of, for those who hear your story, you kind of seeing what you've been working for kind of coming to fruition, was recognized at this level. Kind of tell us, what kind of experience was that for you to meet the First Lady and to be recognized in one of the most popular and well-respected Black magazines in the U.S.?
Well, for me, first of all, I'd like to just acknowledge the ancestors, because I stand on the shoulders of greatness. I've had great parents and great family and friends that continue to uh, exhibit, positive images for me. I'm very humbled by what I do, but I'm very comfortable in questioning what's wrong. I feel that saying the truth and bringing the truth is so, so powerful. And so there are times when I'm in spaces where by the truth may hurt, but I always want to try to come from a place of love, and for people to understand how painful and how harmful certain situations are. And so I've always used that sort of platform to challenge systems as number one, but also, for so long you've always been told what you can't do,
Hmm.
cannot do, and I've always used that as the mechanism to turn that around and say I can do. And so what I tell a lot of young people out there, again, first of all, that they will find their voice to stand up for truth and justice is really, really important. And then also to throw your dreams out to the universe. I think
Hmm.
a lot of things that have happened in my life because I was able, I'm first of all, I'm very spiritual, that's number one, but able to put out my hopes and dreams out to the universe so that someone can hear it. Someone can
Yeah.
hear it. And all the accolades that I've gotten is all well and good. But for me, I said greatness cannot happen and this is me personally, cannot happen to me while the people behind me are still suffering. And so, like I said, those accolades are all well and good. I just hope I use, like you said, that platform to open doors for the next generation of people. But again, I can never, never sort of leave the fact that, again, it's the ancestors that continue to drive the work that I do, that they have made a road for me to do the work that I've done, that I continue to do, and I cannot disavow that legacy. I mean, I feel them with me all the time, and so I just give them thanks as well as the Creator.
Yes. Well put, and well humbly and empoweringly put. And even you are actually, building a legacy. I know that you are the co-founder of the Black Urban Growers. And I mean, from what I see is Black leadership, in movement of, empowering into food justice. So is that one of the fruitions of the work that you're doing, to how you want to expand that platform and, help others in this, to help move and drive them and connect them all to where more we can, break down the walls and the barriers that minorities face when it comes to food injustice?
Yeah, well, I think as a leader, so started Black Urban Growers, back in 2010 when we had the first Black Farmers in Urban Garden Conference in the country. And that was predicated on the fact that, again, looking at the overall census, I would just say from my point of view, New York City, 50, at that time, 2008,
Hmm.
55,000 white farmers, only 116. Fast forward, 2021, 57,000 white farmers, only 139 are Black. And if you look at the census across the country, we are diminishing in numbers as Black farmers. So we had this conversation because no one was addressing the issues that were affecting the Black community, and not only in terms of land and food, businesses, education, economics, all those driving forces that no one from the Black community were talking to us collectively. And so it was an eye opener. We had over 500 people at that time, mostly young people, for the first time to be able to go to a conference and see people that look like them,
Hmm.
instead of always having gardening and farming conference with a white perspective. And so we didn't have it 2020 because of COVID, but we're going into transition because, again, I started that with friends back in 2010. And so right now we are reevaluating. For me, it's always about shifting the leadership back into new people, to the young people to carry on. I think sometimes we sort of be in places for too long and never allow new voices and young people to come. So right now we're in that transition period where we are inviting new leadership, which is really, really good. One of
Hmm.
the new platforms that I am working on is the Black Farmer Fund, which started back in 2019. So with the Black Farmer Fund, which is in New York, is New York based now, what we're trying to do is, again, take down the capitalistic system, again, that has been extractive, that has not met the needs of Black farmers and Black businesses, and look at ways that we can support our Black businesses and Black farmers without the first question that's being asked is, show me your credit. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, and being denied loans, or if we do get loans, the interest rate is so high that you have to
Mm-hmm.
wind up mortgaging your house. And then the last part of that, the Black Farmer Fund, which is really critical, like I said in the very beginning, is the educational piece.
Okay.
Is getting Black folks in the room and starting educating on how do we base build, how do we do social capital and communal wealth, so that at the end of the day, our resources come back into our community and that being taken out of our community.
Well, Miss Karen, I love the work that you're doing. It's, you know, it's so I guess it's empowering, when, you find people that are just really, really driven to help create change for others. And, it's almost like what I do. So I'm sure, I'm a dietitian, but I do way more than just tell people what food is healthy and what's not. I understand there's a connection. And it's very similar to a quote that you made. You said, for you is feeding people's body, and they're also their spirit. When it comes to just back to what you're saying in the beginning, like it's more than just about planning food. It's what it represents for you, what kind of opportunities it represents, what you can do with it. We as a people in general, but especially as minority people, we have to understand, how to redefine our value and how to come together and recognize what is one of the links that's crumbling, that's preventing us from being successful or being healthy, whatever it is, as far as just us thriving, is the food. It's the food system. How we interact with it, how do we value it? So I'm just inspired to just have someone else having a conversation that's sitting around food, but sitting around in a way that how can we create change for those communities that truly, truly, really need, and create opportunities and spaces for them. So I really do appreciate that. As we're getting ready to close, unfortunately, I know you just spoke upon several different projects that you have. I want to give you an opportunity to help. How can people learn more about you, find out about certain organizations you're a part of, their coalitions, and so how they can be a part of, how they can learn, be educated, be a part of the conference? Like, how can people just see what's going on in your world?
Yeah, well, I have a Facebook page, Karen Young Washington. That's my Facebook page. I have also a website, KarenTheFarmer.com. My farm, RiseandRootFarm.com, and also Bugs, Black Urban Growers.
See?
And then also the Black Farmer Fund. So, but I'm all over the place. Somebody said, "Oh, we Google you." I didn't know anything about Googling people, but I guess you can do that too.
Well, I Googled you and I'm like, wow, she is doing a lot. But I love it because you're not just it has nothing to do with you. It's what you're doing for others. And it's only coming from, what others did for you. So you're just passing the torch. That's what you're doing. Yes. And I so appreciate that. I'm going to close this, but one thing that I saw one of your quotes and it just made me smile. One of the quotes that I seen you wrote, you said, "I always felt within me that there was a purpose for why I am here on this earth." I'm going to say it again. I always felt within me that there was a purpose for why I am here on this earth. Do you know I tell it to people all the time, especially those who I know who are thriving to just exhaust their life in a positive way. I always say, it's two most important things that happen to your life. Two most important. The moment where you were born and the moment when you knew what you were born to do. Because when you know what you're born to do, no one can tell you different. No one can stop it. You know which direction. You know why you're here on earth. So it's very, it's enjoyable to see that someone else feels the same way. You know why you're here, Miss Karen. So I appreciate you coming on to the show today. I appreciate just being on your team. I'm going to do my part as a dietitian. We're going to work this together and we're going to keep creating this change that we're both looking for. So I really appreciate you being on today.
Thank you for having me. Bye now.
Yes. Well, guys, as always, take a look at Miss Karen's website. She has a lot of different opportunities for those, for educating you, giving you routes and ways that you can, do it on your own or be a part of her organizations. Find her at her website, find her on Facebook, Google her. She's around there somewhere. Take a look at her TED Talk. She has a lot to talk about. She has a lot of life that she is giving out. So be a part of her movement. Reach out to her. I'm sure she'll respond back. And again, that's Dietitian Against Diets. It's never about the diet. It's about the diet mentality. Take care, guys, and see you next time. Well, thank you again for taking the opportunity to listen to the podcast show. I'm really hoping that the stories that you're hearing that are resonating to yourself. And if they are, feel free to share it to others by sharing it via YouTube, sharing it via Facebook, or sharing it via Instagram. And also, I want to do a quick shout out to one of my podcast partners. You may have seen their logo before. You may have heard of them before, but they're called Undeniably Dairy. I'm sorry, Undeniably Dairy. Let me make sure I said it correctly. Which is really centered around educating about dairy sustainability practices and their undeniably good tasting dairy products. Now, it's really important to know the path of farm to table when it comes to dairy products. And this platform, Undeniably Dairy, allows that to be a hub that brings farmers and consumers together. So many of us, don't understand the hard work that are done every day by dairy farmers. And also, many of us may not even know how much heart is put behind the animal care. Now, I remember I've gone to a couple of farms myself, but one farmer told me, and I will never forget, he said, happy, healthy cow always produces the highest quality of milk. So that makes sense to me why animal care is so important and why it's top priority. If you're curious about getting to know where your dairy products come from, and also the real work done and seeing the things behind the scenes, go to usdairy.com and learn of the stories, learn of the processing, and learn all the sustainability practices that Undeniably Dairy is doing for our consumers and for our earth. Take care, guys, and I will see you next week.